Greetings, thank you for joining me today. It's book review day. Now, for those who are not familiar with the series, because it's only just started for me, I'm reviewing books which are worthy of your time, and will make you think. Things which are, in some cases, banned in states of the USA, particularly banned in schools, not necessarily banned in the state itself. We don't see too many books being banned in a country for sale completely, thankfully. It's about really the books that are being controlled in schools, which I find offensive. You know, when I was at school, we had an expansive library. It was a small school, but we still had a very big library. And when I actually went and read some of the works in that library, I realised a lot of those would probably be banned in a US school purely because of the subjects they dealt with. But there they were to expand the minds of the students in my school. And obviously times have moved on, things get digitised, and I guess some of those paperworks, you know, things like the book here, would have been lost. You know, thing is, there is something to be said for having a physical copy of something. You know, if disaster happens, if war happens, if nuclear war happens and takes out your power, it won't be very long before you lose access to digital media. Even if you've stored a copy on your phone, you know, your digital books won't last an awful long time. Because a lot of things are held in the cloud, and that's easy for governments, for bad actors to suspend. So if you can always try and get yourself a hard copy of a book that's worthy, you know, whether it's a storybook or textbook or whatever. That's my take on it. And I don't work for a publisher, but I have done in the past. So now, the subject in question. So today's book, it's The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Now, it's my loss, really. I've left it this long to actually go ahead and get a copy and read it. Really is my loss, because it was a cracking good read. Thoroughly recommended. It's not easy reading, not by any means at all. But it is a book I would love to see in every school library across the world, frankly, because it talks of something that could actually happen, that maybe is happening on some levels. It talks about a time when bad actors take over the USA, turn it into a republic. They storm the Capitol and they shoot all the politicians and take over and suspend the Constitution, the list of things that Americans hold dear for anyone outside the USA. And in so doing, the worst case scenario is realised. And then it becomes more of an Arabic state, shall we say, in the loosest of terms. We think more like the Taliban sort of state, where women don't have rights, not in a traditional sense. They don't have rights to education, to owning land, to owning property of any sort. They don't have money, and they're not allowed to read, and all these things are imposed upon them. And the book gives us a vast timescale. You know, we're led to believe maybe things do get better eventually, but during this time of the Republic, women are used as mere breeding tools, and that's it. And so the protagonist in this story, that Handmaid, is a sex slave. Goes from a life where she was comfortable and had, traditional, normal. You might call them privileges, but just a normal life when she had freedoms, to the life of someone who is a sex slave to a commander in the house. And it's an awful story. It's not an easy read. And the whole regime brings changes in on the basis of, we need to get religious, we need to find our God, and it's a twisted version of a state religion that's been imposed, and every other religion is slowly stamped out by the regime. And it talks about that, but of course it talks about, at one stage she gets taken off to what is essentially a massive swingers meeting, and to show behind closed doors these people in control are just as corrupt as maybe the politicians who went before were. And you realise it's very much like the politics of today. Politicians wrapping themselves in the flag, claiming to be God-fearing, whatever, or religious, whilst going around and doing some pretty contemptible acts. Now, by the way, I don't agree with any storyline that really has a go at people with alternative lifestyles, and swinging is one of those. Not having a go at you if you're in that lifestyle, not at all. But fact is, this is what it touches on. It's uncomfortable reading, it really is. So Yeah, but highly recommended. Now, is this the sort of thing you'd see in a school library? Well, maybe not. But when I was a boy, the school I went to as a secondary school, the secondary school had an expansive library, and it really was amazing because so many of the works that were in there, wouldn't be allowed in an American school because they touch on questioning religion, they question sexuality, they question politics, they question all sorts of things that the powers that be wouldn't want you thinking about, let alone questioning. Because when a book's not going to necessarily change your mind on a subject, but if it gets you thinking, that's half the battle. If it evokes a reaction in you, evokes emotions, evokes anger or joy or whatever it is, then it's doing a job. That's what the book is for. That's what the book is, to deliver information and make you think. That's what all good books do. So from that point of view, it is worthy of being in any library. Now, is it something you'd necessarily want the very young to read? Well, no. It is a teenage and upwards read. It really is. But it makes you think about what could happen. And of course, recent events, we saw the Trump posse storming the Capitol when they lost that last election. But we still see a lot of nonsense going on in the States, regardless of who's in power, which suggests that maybe the population isn't as free as they might like to believe they are. I'm thinking about abortion rights and things like that. I will put links to articles in newspapers and things like that are worth considering in my description, because I can go on massive tangents just trying to talk about everything here, and I don't want to take your time up if you're not interested in that. Okay. Now, the book's got an interesting writing style. It's much like the cinematic writing style of many more modern movies, where it goes back and forth in time, and it does that to paint the picture properly. So you start off with the protagonist of the story and their current life in the present day in this dystopian regime, but you get to see how she was in better times, when she was married, when she had a child, and all this is ripped away from her as part of the progression of the plot. It also touches on other aspects. So there are other characters within the plot. The lady of the house, where she's a slave, she was a mover and a shaker in getting the regime into power, and in various tellings of the story. There's a movie apparently, if you want to watch that instead, you can watch that, where the lady in the house is painted as someone who pushed the religious aspect of, should all be more God-fearing, yada yada yada, and ends up as trapped in her own home, unable to interact as the women she's sought to pin down. So it makes you think about things like that. It makes you see how these regimes take a hold, and of course she ends up very, very discontented. It shows how people react under stress, and they have this, and it's well described, sort of like a headdress, which is rather like other regimes we could talk about, but aren't going to because of algorithms, where people aren't allowed to interact, and the clothing is there to prevent interaction as much as anything else. Not necessarily to keep the individuals chaste and pure, but rather to prevent interaction. And it's all about social control, and there's a hierarchy in place, a caste system, if you like. We've seen that in other cultures, and it's never good when you have these systems in place. They're there for control. They're there to keep the people who want to stay in power in power. They're there to keep the rich rich. And that's what it boils down to. So at the end of the day, whilst this regime have pushed themselves into power with the most brutal means possible, it's still for the same old reasons. It makes you think throughout the book, and it got me thinking. It got me very angry. Angry indeed. Within the story, they talk about pollution and war and things that cause massive pollution and damage to the human race, because in this storyline, birth rates have gone right down to ridiculous levels, and as a result, the regime has to enforce the handmaids as a way of breeding for the elite, at least, to allow that, and supposedly, get back to a society where there's enough breeding women available to allow us to survive. not just die out. That's the reasoning that's pushed, for the population. Obviously, getting pregnant was a problem before for this in this timeline, of course, but it's an uncomfortable read because of that, because you think it's all too very real for a lot of people. And you can see how this could so very easily become reality. And in a lot of states of the USA, they've now outlawed abortions. They've made it so very difficult to get an abortion, even if all the right reasons would say that's the way to go. In the case of there being a medical need, it's endangering the life of the mother. A lot of hospitals aren't touching women who are pregnant, who need assistance, but it would cause maybe damage, it would cause an abortion. They're not going to touch it, and so we're seeing more and more. Think about Texas. If you want to do a Google search, Google Texas, Google abortion deaths, you'll see a lot there, and that's risen since the laws have come in. It's a cruel way, and it's religion gone bad. That's what it is, because people want to, if a fetal heartbeat is there, surely that's when life starts. But is it really? I think we've got to really look at that very carefully. And it got me thinking. It gets you wandering off on all sorts of tangents when you read a book, and it just gets you thinking, and you stop reading to just think about things, to try and process for a while. It got me thinking, well, where does life start? Where indeed? Is it in the womb? I very much doubt it. I feel it's probably more a case of souls joining the new body once you're born, at some point. Because if you look at any child as they develop, you go from the newborn baby, which is all very cuddly and wonderful, and everyone has the urge to protect them. It's the parenting comes out in anybody, whereas but it takes a while for the character to come out, and it's like you wonder, do souls join the body later on? Is it something more like that? 1 soul, 2 soul, 3 soul? Who knows? But a lot of people report they have first recollections. It's usually 3 or 4, maybe 5 years old. They've got first recollection. Before that point, everything's a bit hazy. But after sort of an event, something wakes them up. They all of a sudden wake up and they're thinking more like they do for the rest of their life. It's very interesting. And it could be about the brain development, getting to a certain stage to allow that to actually happen, to allow the processes to really work. Or it could be that a baby's just an empty vessel for souls. Obviously, let me know what you think. I'm just waffling like a madman here, but the fact is, it makes you think, and for that reason, it's a worthy book. It makes me very cross when you hear in the States of books being banned from school libraries because they make people feel, because they make people think, because they discuss things that the parents are uncomfortable with. I mean, in some states they've literally banned the Bible, in the Quran, because they deal with violent issues, they deal with sexual issues, they deal with race issues. Yeah, contentious issues. They're of their time. You can't have a go at a book for that reason. You read it, you take what you can from it, but you should never ban a book, with very few exceptions, obviously. But there are a number of books out there which by rights shouldn't be publicised, shouldn't be pushed, because they do have offensive material in them. I think Mein Kampf is a very good example of one of those. We don't want to be reading that one. I would never pick up that one. And a whole bunch of books like it, obviously, and things that are there to twist the mind. But for the most part, a good book is there to make you think. It's not going to change any minds. It's not going to change anybody's gender. It's not going to change anybody's anything. It's just going to make you think. It's going to bring on a visceral response, an emotional response, and that's what a good book does. It shows you maybe a better way to communicate. It expands your literary knowledge. It expands your vocabulary. It is there to make you a better person in the reading of it. And anyway, thank you for listening to me today. I do appreciate your time, whatever you do. Have a great day. If you think of any books that you think I might enjoy or would be worth reading, whether I enjoy them or not, do let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Whatever you do, have a great day. See you soon. Bye for now.